Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we are going to be talking about navigating our world. We now need tools, we need guidance, we need support. How do we find it? How do we sift it out of all of the stories we've been told before? How do we chuck away all of the templates and say, what am I going to experience? How do I feel it? How does it explore and work with my world? And what will I take and piece together to be this better person? Isn't that truly what we're looking for? We're looking and we're saying, do we need all the old wisdom? Do we need all the old stories? Do we need the gurus who sit on the sideline and tell us what to do and the yahoo us along the way? Perhaps maybe it's about finding our own intuition, our own instincts, our own abilities, and that voice. So what we truly are needing is a guidebook. How can we work from this moment in time to be able to go forward? Today, my guest is Lauryn Axelrod. Her book is 10 Words, an Interspiritual Guide to Becoming Better People in a Better World. Lauryn, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Jeanette. Really an honor.
Well, Lauryn, it's a pleasure to have you with us here to talk to us about your 10 words, as you call them in your book, because I think many people are saying, well, what is the first step? What is my step? And how do I make it unique to me? I think really, truly, that's what your book is about, yes?
Yeah, it's really about finding your own spirituality, right? Whatever that means for you. And what the 10 words are really is a framework. It's a structure. Mm-hmm. Because what we do find at this point, when we have so many options and we have so much information out there, that what's happened is we've kind of started cherry picking or created what I call a spiritual smoothie. You know, we take a little bit of this and we take a little bit of that and we throw it all in the blender and we have something, but it's really easy to just sort of still be hungry. Like it's not getting us where we need to go, which is, you know, we all want to live better lives, be better people, and live in a better world. And that is really the point of spirituality. But my intention with the 10 words is not to tell you, here's doctrine, here's dogma, here's what you have to believe. It's to encourage you and to give you a framework for exploring it and discovering it for yourself.
The first word right off the beginning is attention. You know, so many times people will say, well, I'm not putting my focus there because that's not where I want to be. And something comes at them, they'll say, well, I'm going to shape-shift the words and it's going to be okay for me. Instead of sitting in the moment and say, I can experience, I'm feeling, I'm exploring, and be real with it. So many are really doing this diversion panel, you know what I mean? I even had someone who said to me, they said, oh, yeah, you know, I'm a truly spiritual person, and I saw this person, and they were on the corner, and they needed some money. But, you know, I said to them, you know, I didn't have any money, but I'll send you some prayers. And I'm going, oh, how dishonest was that? You know?
Right.
Right, and I just kind of took a step back, and I had to breathe and say, okay, there's nothing wrong with that person, what they did, but what that person did is they're just saying I need a few more steps of guidance. I need a little bit more help. Perhaps maybe I need a little more exploration of myself. And that's what your book, it takes. It's not the leading edge. It's about in the meat of the story, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, really these 10 words are about who we can be or who we can become and how we can be with others, right? So it's really a self-cultivation process, self-exploration process, but in so doing, we discover ways that we behave in the world, that we take it out, that we ripple it out. And it's, you know, we're always wherever we are. And there's no final destination. I mean, I'm not talking about you're going to be enlightened, find nirvana, go to heaven, none of that, right? I mean, it'll get you there if that's what you believe, but I'm not telling you need to believe that or that's where you need to get to. You're just wherever you are, and you take the next step in front of you, right? And the first word is attention. Well, the first word is attention because you're not going to go anywhere if you're not just paying attention to where you are right now.
Yes. I think a lot of times people will say, but this is where I am, and they put up all their boundaries and their labels and their identifiers. And once you put up all of them, they're trying to work within that parameter to be able to find themselves, but yet they've let the identifiers define themselves. Perhaps?
Right. Right. That takes us to the third word, which is authenticity. You know, is that our external senses of who we are, all these identifiers, all these, you know, I am a this, I am a that, all of that is just on the surface. It's discovering who you really are.
And it's so much different, I think, once we start having this conversation. I was just thinking about this the other day. I was speaking with someone who works with angels, you know, and the end of life, as I do. And I had said to them, I said, yes, my father had passed into his next form. And they were like, going into this other thing of, oh, I'm so sorry that it did, but all this other story kind of idea. And I'm going... Truly, really, he was my father's, by saying my father, that was just a name that was identified for the soul for this existence. And if we can take it really back and look at it, and we say that, we say, well, then, wow, then really, who am I? Because so many people will say, I am. They're attached to all these other things, mother, father, brother, sister, doctor, this, that, the other, book writer, whatever it is. And we end up collecting so much of a badge around ourselves that we can't seem to find our way without being stuck to everything, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that is why, you know, I like to say that spirituality really centers around three questions. The first of which is, who am I? Right? The second one is, what's going on here? You know, what's all this about? What's happening here? And the third one is, how am I supposed to live in relationship to that?
Yeah.
So the first question is always, who am I?
Right.
And really, once you get rid of those identities and you get rid of the masks and you get rid of I should be a this or I am, you know, any of that, it really becomes an interesting question because you discover that you don't know.
Yeah.
And then it gets interesting, right?
And then it gets really, I think, don't you think people get really frightened by that idea? Well, then you're telling me that life is no longer worth it? This human story that we've concocted about our legacy or our obituary is no longer important. And I'm going, yes, I'm telling you that. What if?
Well, I don't know.
What if, right?
I would actually say it is important. It's just not the only thing that's important. So for me, you know, this is a both-and proposition. That we live in a dualistic world. We have a human material experience. And that has value. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't have a body and we wouldn't live in, you know, a material world. But we do. And that has value. And there's another level of our being, of our existence, that also has value. It's not a one or the other. It's how do we live in relationship, right, to both of those.
Yes.
To both of those.
I think, don't you think sometimes, though, we get stuck and we use it as a filter. But we use it as a filter by which everything else is judged. In other words, if you're, I mean, we see this. We'll use healthcare that's the best one we always do. When we talk about healthcare, you go to the doctor tells you blah, blah, blah. And then you ask questions that are outside the parameter of what they're licensed will allow them to say, do, or be able to explore with you. And you're going to get no answer, but then you turn around and you lash out at their profession because you believe, or the person, and you say that they're not what you expected them to be. But yet they were staying within the parameter that they were supposed to. So in essence, where we are, I think, currently in the year 2025, is that we are realizing that we have been engaging in a lot of these silos, these glass silos of experiences. And we kind of have kept them that way, but we've also held them up as being right or wrong or whatever it might be, or better than.
And I think what you're getting to is, the stories that we concoct and the belief systems that we concoct that are just, they're constructs, they're mental constructs. And if we believe them and we narrow ourselves and our experience based on those beliefs, then we really kind of, we limit our experience entirely because we're really not able to, when you start talking about spirituality, your experience of the sacred, you might experience the sacred in awe of something in the material world. For example, you go out hiking or something and there's this beautiful sunset and you're on top of a mountain. I mean, that's going to produce what I would call a spiritual experience of awe, of wonder, right? But if you narrow it and you go, oh, well, I'm just looking at a sunset on a mountain, then you really limit your capacity to experience the sacred. You got to get out of the constructs a little bit. And it is scary, as you mentioned before. I mean, it's really hard to have the curtain pulled back. That's why, one of my teachers used to say, you think enlightenment's a tea party? No, it's not. It's going to destroy everything that you thought you knew. And it does.
But let's take it right into the word balance. To myself, I always say that there's a paradigm. It goes left to right, light to dark, high to low, whatever you want to call it. And so many are trying to find that balance. In other words, that a little median in the middle, the tip of the pin, so to speak, and they try so hard to be able to stay there. Their health, keep it in balance. Their life, keep it in balance so that they don't fall off and experience too much either way. I mean, we think about bipolar. You don't want to go, either one or either way, or else you'll be classified as such. And so many times people will say, I have to clamor to be able to be in balance. Myself, I would say, I live here in New Orleans, and I experience whatever comes along. We experience things. We experience hurricanes. Oh, wow, this is something, Oh, well, that's awful. You need to move. You shouldn't be there. That's the wrong place to... I'm here. I'm experiencing it. Move on. You know what I mean? All of that other dogma, I don't need to hear that. That doesn't even fit into my paradigm anymore. It never has. I've just plain let it diffuse out. I'm here to experience. That's what I'm here for. That is my position. And I think sometimes we forget there are many people who are light workers, seekers, forerunners, who are put in the position to experience many of these things just for that purpose, to be able to share stories, to radiate light, to have a point of living of the words, what if, and say, can you dance all the way down that way, dance all the way back that way, and still say I'm still intact. Yeah. I mean, you bring up two of the words, right? One of them is acceptance. Things are what they are. Yeah, okay, there's a hurricane. It sucks, but it is what it is, right? That ability to experience, to accept all of it, all of the experience, that's the word acceptance. When you talk about balance, and I think, you mentioned it, the way people are like, well, I'm trying to stay in this very, very narrow band, right? Which nature doesn't do that. Everything's moving in harmony, right? And sometimes
You go a little bit further one direction and a little bit further the other direction. It's not that everything has to be equal. Balance isn't that. Balance is keeping things in harmony. And so I think where we get stuck, particularly in our modern language, our modern thinking is, we've got to have everything equal and everything, just so and just perfect. So I'm not feeling anything on on one side or the other. I'm just sort of like in this gray zone. When I was a kid, my mother once told me, because I wanted all the excitement. I wanted all the up at the top, right? And she said to me, you know what, Lauren, you cannot live at the top of the EKG all the time. Mm-hmm. And I said, why not? And she said, because it's a flat line. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in nature that operates that way. Everything is always in constant motion, which means it's kind of like, have you ever stood on like a Bosu ball or a balance board or something, or tried to surf or ski or anything, right? Anytime you're trying to balance, you're making all of these constant micro adjustments just to keep your body upright. Well, that's the nature of the way this universe works. We're always going to be making all these little micro adjustments, and sometimes we go to one direction, sometimes we have to go back the other direction. It's always moving, always.
So many times I've shared the idea about the Chinese medicine, the yin and the yang. Mm-hmm. It was never meant to be gray. It was never meant to be in balance. It was meant to always be in flow, to always be there, and there would always be a difference beyond that median point. The idea was, did you really always think about the middle point? We have a lot of people these days who said, I need to go and be in my Zen place. I need to meditate and step away. How did you step away? You didn't step away from anything. All you did was just turn down your radiators in your head for a little while, and then you step back into them again. So in essence, sometimes those ideas and those concepts are definitely very much in step with the times. However, our aspects, our acceptance of them, and the way in which we experience them are a little bit in the beginning stages, perhaps.
Right. And that's the beauty of these 10 words. If you notice, just the words that we've mentioned, right, which is really like kind of the first 4 or 5, that they're really basic words. Like, we know what they are, except do we really? And so what they invite is drop what you think you already know about these words, because these are principles, and they're principles that show up from the smallest scale to the largest. And they've been pulled from all of our sacred texts, as well as science and psychology, because the mystics kind of knew what they were talking about, and the scientists are just figuring it out. They're just able to prove it, But if you start to actually explore, all right, what does this word mean, really, for me? What does it mean? How is it showing up in my life? How can I cultivate it? And how can I bring it out into the world? So they, they're inquiries. They're not thou shalt or thou shalt not, thou shalt be in balance. No. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that balance is a principle. And that principle applies across the board. So how does it apply for you? Because the beautiful thing about these words is they're going to show up every single day. You don't have to look for them. They're going to be there. I guarantee you don't get through a day without there being a moment of like, is this in balance? Is this not in balance? Where am I in this spectrum of balance? Or am I accepting what's happening? Because we're all really good at like, I can accept this. Oh, wait, no. I don't know if I can accept that. Like that's constant. And we're constantly going to have to focus on our attention. And we're constantly going to have to go back to the authenticity. Am I, being true to my nature? Am I walking my talk? They're going to show up. And those are just 4 of the 10 words. So you can imagine.
Pretty much I live a kind of Tao kind of life. I always have this entire existence, pretty much in harmony with everything. Even this recent time of full moon, I went, the past few months or years, it has always been my lower legs. I could feel it when a full moon's coming, they would feel heavy. Recently, the earth has been shifting, and I've noticed, now it's my back and my spine that's been very stiff. And I'm going, oh, interesting. That's something different. So I think sometimes once you start going on this exploration of these words, of these concepts, you kind of close the door to your old way of existence. And these words, just as you said, will come up all the time. I know for myself, it's always there. It's always been. And I would always share with people, and they would say, my gosh, I don't know what world you live in, but you need to come back to reality because it's going to hit you one day. And I'll say, no, thank you. I'm living quite fine in the world I'm in, because truly I see the life in a very different way. And you also talk about creativity and collaboration. How do you live in the world of being a better person? Even down to the restaurants. I don't really go out to restaurants pretty much at all, maybe once a year. But I had this thought, and this person I was talking to, and they're always like, yeah, I'm going out here, I'm going this, I'm going there. And they're bringing home food for the next day. And I'm thinking, gosh, what if just one time we went to the restaurant, we did not leave with a go box of styrofoam to put in our refrigerator and throw it away later? What if we said to the restaurant, can I buy half a plate, leave the other half a plate and donate it at the end of the night? Or are there two people in this restaurant that would like to share this with me? How would we? And people are going, you're crazy. That's so ridiculous. And I'm going, but that's how you live in a world of collaboration. That's how you live in the world of creativity. That's how you live in a world in which everyone benefits in society, and there is no waste. There is no breaking down of further paradigms. We put out styrofoam. It has emissions. We have garbage. We have waste. We have too much green gas with all the food that we keep throwing out. So, I mean, we have to think and reverse the wheel and say, what if, again, and say, can we live in a what if? What if this happened? What if that happened?
Well, and
it's so different way to think.
Yeah, and the words are a framework for that, because they're principles that apply across the board. So just like you're talking about, if we are going to understand that we live in an interconnected cosmos and that we have a responsibility for what we create, and we're creating all the time, with every breath we exhale, we are creating, literally. Right? So we have a responsibility for that creativity. And because everything exists interdependently, that means we have a responsibility to work collaboratively. Not to conquer, not to control, but to collaborate, to co-create. All those CO words, right? Those are all part of really those two words, but especially collaboration. How do we live in communion, in community, with everyone and everything? And that is going to ask of us to explore, what does it really mean to collaborate? If I'm going to collaborate with the environment, then I wouldn't be producing styrofoam. I wouldn't be throwing it into the landfill, right? So recently I was talking with someone else on a podcast, and, I said, listen, we don't have a political problem. We don't have an economic problem. We don't have a social problem. We don't have an environmental problem. We have a spiritual problem. Because if we actually remembered that this is all sacred, all of it, we couldn't do any of those things. So at the root, fundamentally, it's because we have to remember that, these principles, they come out of the sacred texts. You can look at them without that. But at some point, you're going to have to go, whoa, wow, look at all of this. How lucky are we, and how did all of this happen? And that's when you start going into the realm of the sacred. And the sacred is whatever it is for you. You can call it, God, spirit, ultimate reality, the Tao, the great cheesecake, for all I care. I don't care what you call it. But it's your relationship to that matters. And if nothing is sacred, then everything can be desecrated. And that's where we're at. And that's why words like collaboration are important.
I think also, too, Lauren, the idea is that we need to respect and honor the idea that we are living longer. Many decades ago, people were dying. By the time they were 60, they knew that was their time and they were up. And let's go all the way back to the early 1900s. There was no respect for human life. It was all about war, It was about abuse and violence within the home and outside of the home. So if we turn around and we look at man really had no respect for self at all. It was all about conquering, protection, and safety. And then we started to go into the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and it was all about collection. What do I have? Then the 70s and 80s, it was all about how I reflect in the world. How much can I collect and get? And then we look at the 90s and 2000s, it's all about everyone look at me, look at me. So truly it's about, we need to look at through history and say, who are we, what have we come through, how have we experienced it and held on to it and noticed it, and then we can turn around and say, now I'd like to choose something differently to be able to say that. And I think that, sometimes if we talk to some younger people, they're like, well, I don't really know what you're talking about. It's because they haven't experienced it. If you speak, as I do with many people at end of life, they have a lot of stories to tell because they did experience it. So it all depends about who you are, where you've been, what you're going through, and where you're at on the paradigms to speak. I think that that's truly what we're seeing, yes?
Yeah, and this is also why I say you are where you are. And depending upon where you are in your stage of life, in your experience, these words are going to show up differently for you. Right. And they're not hard and fast written stone. This is, they're not thou shalt. They're intended to say, okay, based on my experience, based on the fact that, when we look at history, again, I say these are distilled from the teachings of all of our great faith and wisdom traditions, as well as science and psychology. There must be a reason for that, right? There's a reason for why these principles show up across the board. So if there's a reason for that, there's something they can teach us. And I'd like to say, we've had the instructions for millennia. We really have had the instructions for a long time. We just choose not to pay any attention to them sometimes. We choose to denigrate them or ignore them or dismiss them. But the instructions are there, and the instructions are embedded in these 10 words, in these principles. This is how we become better people in a better world, regardless of where you are in your stage of life. It's a process. You're not going to get to the end until you get to the end. And even then, who knows, right?
But also, too, I think that the idea is that we had to explore grief and hardship and pain and suffering. It's essential. Of course. It is part of it.
Of course.
I have so many people saying, I only live in the light. I'm afraid of the dark, or I'm not going into the dark, or I will never go into the dark. And for me, I love the dark and the light. I mean, to me, it is all awesome, and I can't see it any other way. 1 minute I'm over here, 1 minute I'm over there.
I like to say that the wholeness is the holiness, right? We're going to get the dark and the light. That's part of being alive in a human body. Sorry. This is what the Buddha said. Stuff's going to happen. It's not all going to be in the light. And if you're going to sit there and say, I'm just going to stay in the light, I don't want to have anything to do with the dark, we actually have a term for that. It's called spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
And the only way that you are really going to understand the whole of what it means to be alive, of this miracle of existence, is to say, okay, this too. There's dark and there's light. There's yin and there's yang.
So I want to talk about, there's a lot of judgment going on. You know, people will say, I want this, not that. I'm going to go here, not there. I'm going to be this, not that. And, you know, I think the judgment is just, it's been incredible in the world. You know, I think about this one story. I was in medical school and I had gone to clinic one day, and the teacher, she was so indignantly, she was always just like that. That was her attitude. And she looked at me one day and she says, I think you need to go home and rethink your profession. And I looked at her and go, why? She said, and she looked down at my shoes, and I had bought shoes, you know, the same kind in different colors. And I had one brown shoe on and one black shoe on. And of course, you know, I mean, and it means nothing to me. It really didn't. I'm like, whatever, you know what I mean? I thought, oh, isn't that cool? That's funny. You know, it's a talking point, you know? And I think we see this so often, you know, and it has come up in my life, you know, with my 4 degrees, every single one of them. I can tell you the day, the date, the time, who said it, and what they said. And every time it was a dean, and they said, you need to leave the profession, you need to leave this school and not come back. This is not for you. You don't belong here. Every single one of them has said that exact phrase. And when I think back and I look back and I went, oh, isn't that awesome? I was being guided, and they were just reminding me every single time this is where I was supposed to be. And I just kept going. And, like, I distinctly remember, and what I remember was and I think this is about attention. What I remember is that it didn't fluff me. For some reason, it did not fluff me and throw me off into another road or get me into a tizzy or have me go down this self-deprecating kind of way or whatever it could be. I said, oh, okay.
Right.
So going about my business.
I think that's also about authenticity, right? That's about knowing who you are and saying, well, thanks for sharing, but I'm gonna do what I know I need to be doing. And that's, you know, I mean, you bring up 2 things. One is a kind of, you know, degree of judgmentalness. And it's everywhere right now. I mean, we're so polarized. Everybody's judging everybody. You know, we've got this whole crazy moral barometer going, as if anybody, you know, actually, you know, knows what moral perfection is. But that's where we're at. And you know, we have to be really careful. There's a saying, I believe the 6th patriarch of Zen, who said something akin to, you know, distinctions are a disease of the mind, in the sense that as soon as you separate what you like from what you don't like, you set heaven and hell infinitely apart. You know, that when you create these distinctions and these judgments, not only are you judging yourself, right? But you're also judging the world around you constantly and separating it into what I like and what I don't like. And this is going to take us back into acceptance. It's okay not to like something. You know, we have our preferences. That's natural. You know, I don't really like salt cod, for example. You know, I don't know where that one came from, but, you know, it's something I just, like, if I have a choice, I'm not going to eat salt cod. But do I deny its right to exist? Do I judge it as being bad? That's when we start getting into really tricky things. And it's, you know, you see what's happening. You see how that is creating a culture and a world that becomes very dangerous. It's not the better world that we want to live in, where everyone and everything has its natural right to thrive and live. You know, when we're walking around judging, condemning, saying you don't have the right to exist, who are we to say that? Right.
But I think also, too, the idea is that, let's talk as our final point, is that the idea of We are going into this next frequency, this next dimension, arising. Mm-hmm. And people are saying, well, I'm already arisen. I'm higher up than everyone else. And I'm going, oh, gosh. Please
Bully
stop.
for you. Great.
Yeah, I'm going, awesome. Let me know how it is up there. I'll see you later.
Right. Send me a postcard.
Right. But however, I can think back at the beginning of this radio show, 15 years ago. They were talking about going up to the next dimension. I said, honey, I'm in the 23rd. What's wrong? Because I already knew that I had already what I have, the capabilities, the abilities, the knowledge, the knowing, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But I had already had that within me, and I was just sharing it. But I was sharing it as we are all one, not sharing it as you need to follow. And I think that's a big difference. When you share it as you're all one, it's different.
Right. And that's the thing about the 10 words. Like I didn't make these words up. I just distilled them from my years of study and practice, and distilled them because I was looking for that structure for myself. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's beautiful about them is there's nothing. I'm not, sure, in the book there's, there's some background on why this word is important, what the various traditions say about it, how it might show up in your life, and some reflection questions and some suggested practices. But all of that is useful and not entirely relevant. What is relevant is your experience of it.
Right.
I like to say, there's really very little I can teach you. I'll ask you a lot of questions, and you have to figure it out for yourself. And I'm just sharing what I discovered that worked for me and has given me a framework after, 60 years of deep spiritual practice across traditions, and ending up at the end of that going, I'm still lost. I have all of these techniques, and I have all of these practices, and I have all of this knowledge, and I'm still lost because I don't have a structure. I don't have a path. I need a path.
Yeah.
And I made up a path for myself. And when I made that path up by distilling these principles out of all of the different faith and wisdom traditions, and I shared them with other people, they went, whoa, this is so simple. And I'm like, yeah, well, if it's simple, that should tell you something. Let's try it. And we did. We spent a year, and we spent, one word each month. And by the end of that year, we were all like, wow, this works. This literally will transform you. It will transform your life, and it will transform the world around you. And it's so simple. Doesn't mean easy, but it's simple. You don't have to learn anything exotic. You don't have to contort your body into all kinds of strange positions. You don't need to learn to speak another language.
Right.
You already know these things. We all already know them. We just forget. So this is a pathway to remember, that's all. Yeah. And to keep you from getting lost in the wilds, getting lost out there in the ethers, because there's a lot of wilds out there right now. There's a lot of wild things that are passing for spirituality that have nothing to do with it.
Sometimes I liken that to the abyss, and I'll say absolutely stay in the abyss for a little while, because you know what? Sometimes that helps to drop off a lot of the old stuff. And then you say, I never knew that had such a hold on me. So a lot of times the abyss is a great place to be. Lost for a little while.
Absolutely. Sometimes you really have to get to that place, where you're like, I have no idea what to do, where to go, who to be. I'm lost here. And that's how you find your way back. But it's like you're not going to get there thinking you know all the time. Well, no, I know if I just do this. No. Yeah. Sometimes you basically have to be dangled off the cliff. Mm-hmm. That's the dark night of the soul. That's the classic dark night of the soul. And if you prevent yourself from going there, you're never going to learn what you need to learn.
It seems to be that in the year 2025, we're having a lot of instances where life is going to start teaching us something differently. It's going to show us something differently. There's going to be a lot of events. There's going to be a lot of things go on, up or down, whatever they might be, and a lot of opportunities for soul growth. And I hope that, our listeners take our words, our examples, our inspiration, our stories, and also your book to be able to say, this might be something I need that's more timely. And I think that's what we tried to do today, yes?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I said, we've been given the instructions on how to ride the tsunami. Right? And it's going to be a heck of a year. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of change and all kinds of drama look at what we've just started off with, raging wildfires in LA, and this is just January, right? So the only, in times of crisis, in times of rapid change and rapid transformation, it is even more important that we have something to hold on to, something that grounds us, something that reminds us that we can get through this. Here's how. These 10 words are not only how we get through it individually, but how we get through this collectively and come out the other side of it, whenever that is, stronger, better, in a world where everything and everyone has an opportunity to thrive.
Absolutely. Well, Lauryn, it was a pleasure to have you with us today. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Thanks so much, Dr. Jeanette. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Yes, you can find out about my work at my website, LaurynAxelrod.com. That's LaurynAxelrod.com. My book, 10 Words, An Interspiritual Guide to Becoming Better People in a Better World, is available wherever books are sold, online or in your local bookstore. Instagram, Facebook. Also, I write a Substack called Radical Spirituality, Getting to the Root of What Matters. So if you read Substack, check it out, subscribe. And there's podcasts and all kinds of other things, but those are the main ways.
Very good. Well, Lauryn, it was such a pleasure to have you with us, as we call it, to dance in the ethers today, because I think that's truly about being able to say, when we can step above and reflect, then we can say, oh, look at this, isn't this awesome? And that's what we did today, yes?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's really what it's all about, is being able to step back, step above, look around and say, wow. Yeah. Wow, look at where we are. Look at what we have the opportunity to do and the opportunity to become.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lauryn, for joining us.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
If you'd like to find out more information about Lauryn Axelrod, again, the book is 10 Words, An Interspiritual Guide to Becoming Better People in a Better World. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information. And it is about being able to say we are all in this together. And if that was the only mission, was to be able to show up, to be able to smile, integrate, to be able to support and help this world be a better place, wow, isn't that an awesome mission? Did we forget about it? Are we putting more emphasis on things that don't need to be? Are we maybe getting a little lost in the weeds? It's time to be able to go back, tend your own garden, and be able to say, how can we support each other? That's what the year 2025 will be all about. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.